December 2018 marked a significant shift in the Syrian conflict. The end-of-year events put the country on a new trajectory, one in which President Bashar al-Assad looks towards consolidating his power and Islamic State sees a chance to perpetuate its existence. Turkey's role kick-starting the development was Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's announcement he would start a military operation east of the Euphrates River, an area controlled by the US-supported and Kurdish-led Syrian democratic forces. The US and Kurdish-led Syrian democratic forces control the area to the east of the Euphrates River. Wikimedia comments throughout the 8-year conflict, Assad and his main backer, Russia, have not militarily engaged with the Kurds. Assad and Russia didn't see the Kurds as terrorists or insurgents, but as protectors of their territory against IS and other jihadist forces. But Turkey sees the Kurdish zone as an existential threat. Turkey has legitimate fears. If the Kurdish region in Syria becomes independent, it can unite with the Kurdish region in northern Iraq, eventually claim the largely Kurdish southeast of Turkey. Turkey's intended military operation east of the Euphrates is yet to eventuate. But the announcement was a bold move, made more real by the large military buildup on the Turkish-Syrian border. It put pressure on the U.S. administration and U.S. President Donald Trump to make a call on Syria, either stand firm against Turkey and further stretch already tense relations, or pull out of Syria to abrogate responsibility. Trump chose the second option. He swiftly declared the U.S. would pull out from Syria altogether, and sell Patriot surface-to-air missiles to Turkey to prevent its attempt to purchase the Russian S-400 missile defense system. The removal of U.S. troops came with a Trump-style announcement on Twitter, after historic victories against ISIS, "It's time to bring our great young people home." Since April 2018, Trump had made clear his desire to leave Syria. 10 days after declaring his intention, an episode of chemical attacks forced Trump's hand into staying in Syria and retaliating. This time, though, either the pressure from Turkey worked or Trump saw it as a perfect time to execute his intent to leave. Under the Obama administration, U.S. foreign policy with regards to Syria was to remain there until IS was destroyed completely, Iran and its associated entities removed, and a political solution achieved in line with the UN-led Geneva peace talks. Trump claimed the first goal was complete and saw it as sufficient grounds to pull out. Read more. Further strikes on Syria unlikely, but Trump was always the wild card then. On December 21, 2018, Trump announced Defense Secretary James Mattis would retire at the end of February 2019. Washington Post reported Mattis vehemently objected to, and clashed with Trump over, the Syrian withdrawal. In his resignation letter, Mattis wrote, "You have the right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with yours." Differences have marked U.S. policy on Syria since the beginning of the conflict in 2011. Trump further added to the confusion, and his erratic decision-making also demonstrates his frustration with his own administration. Russia's game. The global fear, of course, is that the U.S. withdrawal will leave Russia as the region's military and political kingpin, with Iran and Turkey as its partners. Read more. Stakes are high as Turkey, Russia and the U.S. tussle over the future of Syria. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has publicly stated that Russia respects Turkey's national interests in Syria. He added Turkey was willing to compromise and work together to improve the situation and fight against terrorism. Turkey appears to have accepted Russian objectives in Syria in return for Russia's green light to do what Turkey deems best for its national interests in the Kurdish region. One Russian objective is to ensure Assad remains Syria's president. Russia may allow Turkey to host limited operations in the Kurdish region, not only to hold a compromise with Turkey, but also to eventually pressure Kurdish forces into cooperating with Russia and accepting the Assad regime. Russia is playing out a careful strategy, pleasing Turkey, but not at the expense of Assad's sovereignty in Syria. Erdogan was a staunch adversary of Assad in the early years of the conflict. Russia counts on Erdogan's recognition of Assad to influence other Sunni-majority states to cross over to the Russian Assad camp. Russia's strategy is to please Turkey, but only to the extent that it doesn't threaten Assad's hold on power in Syria. From Shuttershock.com, the Turkish foreign minister has said Turkey may consider working with Assad if Syria holds democratic elections. Of course, Assad will only agree to elections if he is assured of a win. The United Arab Emirates announced a reopening of its embassy in Damascus, which was followed by Bahrain stating it had never cut its diplomatic ties with the Syrian administration. Although Saudi Arabia denied it, there are media reports that the Saudi Foreign Ministry is establishing diplomatic ties with the Syrian administration. These are indications the main players in the region are preparing to recognize and work with the Assad government. An important step in Turkey's recognition of Assad came in a meeting on January 23 between Putin and Erdogan. Putin reminded Erdogan of the 1998 Adana Pact between Turkey and Syria. The pact began a period of previously unprecedented bilateral links between Turkey and Syria until 2011, when the current conflict flared. Erdogan acknowledged the 1998 pact was still in operation, meaning Turkey and the Assad administration could work together against terrorism. Trump may also see no problem with the eventuality. There was no mention of Assad when he claimed victory in Syria, indicating he does not care whether Assad remains in power or not. Islamic State. The overarching concern is that the U.S. pulling out of Syria would bring back IS. The group has lost large territories and the major cities of Mosul in Iraq and Raqqa in Syria. The last town under its control, Hajin, fell to coalition forces in December 2018. Despite these wins, it's too soon to claim the end for IS. Trump has a solution to this too: outsourcing. In a tweet on December 24, he announced Turkish President Erdogan will eradicate whatever is left of ISIS in Syria. This is highly unlikely as Turkey's main concern is the Kurdish region in northern Syria where IS is not likely to pose any threat. Given Russia and Assad will be the main forces in Syria, their policies will determine the future of IS. Assad would not want IS to jeopardize his own government. At the same time, Assad's claim for legitimacy throughout the civil war was his fight against terrorism, embodied by IS. If IS were to exist in some shape and form, it would benefit Assad in the crucial years of consolidating his power. This may lead to Assad appearing to crack down on IS while not entirely eradicated them. Read more. James Mattis, what Defense Secretary's resignation means for Syria, Afghanistan and NATO, as Trump leans into Putin IS will also try hard to survive. It still has a large number of seasoned commanders and fighters who can unleash guerrilla warfare. IS also has operatives peppered throughout Syria to launch suicide bombing attacks in Syrian cities, similar to what they have been doing in Iraq. Israel, meanwhile, has been quietly hitting Iranian targets in Syria since May 2018. Israeli airstrikes intensified in January 2019 and occurred in broad daylight. In acknowledging the strikes, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel's permanent policy was to strike at the Iranian entrenchment in Syria. We could see more altercations between Israel and Iran in 2019, now that the U.S. has abandoned the objective of countering Iran's presence in Syria. The Syrian conflict is not over. It's just on a new trajectory. The U.S. withdrawal is sure to leave a power vacuum, which will quickly be filled by other regional powers like Turkey, Iran and Israel under the watchful eye of Russia.